Committee will come to order. The chair recognizes herself for an opening statement. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's markup of two important pieces of legislation. Earlier today, we heard from members of the intelligence community about the dangers posed by applications like TikTok that are controlled by foreign adversaries and who are determined to exploit and weaponize Americans' data. We also witnessed firsthand, in real time, how the Chinese Communist Party can weaponize platforms like TikTok to manipulate the American people. This morning, prior to our hearing, TikTok used its influence and power to force users to contact their representatives if they wanted to continue using TikTok. This is just a small taste of how the CCP weaponizes applications it controls to manipulate tens of millions of people to further their agenda. These applications present a clear national security threat to the United States and necessitate the decisive action we will take today. First, we will consider HR 7521, the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act, which will prohibit applications that are controlled by our foreign adversaries and pose a clear national security risk if control is not divested. We will also consider HR 7520, the Protecting Americans' Data from Foreign Adversaries Act of 2024, led by Ranking Member Frank Pallone, which will prevent data brokers from sharing Americans' sensitive information with foreign adversaries. Foreign adversaries, like the Chinese Communist Party, pose the greatest national security threat of our time. Our adversaries are working actively to undermine Americans' global leadership. At its core, HR 7521 is about banning foreign adversaries such as China from targeting, surveilling, and manipulating the American people through apps like TikTok. The bill takes a two-pronged approach. First, it requires ByteDance to divest TikTok and other applications it controls within 180 days after enactment of the bill, or those apps will be prohibited in the United States. Second, the bill creates a narrow process to allow the executive branch to prohibit access to an app that is owned by a foreign adversary if it poses a threat to national security. This is not a blank check for the Biden administration or future administrations to ban whatever apps they want. The executive agencies, including the national security agencies and the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, CFIUS, must agree that a foreign adversary-controlled app poses a threat to national security. The threat to national security must be well documented, the public must be notified, and the information must be presented to Congress, at which point the President may make a determination that a foreign adversary-controlled application must be divested or face prohibition in the United States. This prohibition can only be applied to applications controlled by a foreign adversary, which the bill defines as China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. In all of these cases, there is an option for divestment to occur. If ByteDance divests TikTok, meaning the Chinese Communist Party is no longer controlling the app, TikTok can continue to operate in the United States. CCP-controlled TikTok has claimed this bill is an outright ban. It is not. We have given TikTok a clear choice. Divest from your parent company, which is beholden to the Chinese Communist Party, and remain operational in the United States, or side with the Chinese Communist Party and face a ban. The choice is theirs. Today, we will also be considering HR 7520, the Protecting Americans' Data from Foreign Adversaries Act of 2024. Data brokers collect a stunning amount of sensitive information and data on Americans, from people's physical and mental health to when and where they're traveling. Once collected, this sensitive information is sold to the highest bidder, including foreign adversaries like China. I appreciate the work of Ranking Member Pallone on this legislation and his leadership that will prevent data brokers from sharing America's sensitive information with foreign adversaries and the companies they control. This is an important complement to our continued efforts to establish a comprehensive data privacy standard in order to effectively crack down on abuses of Americans' personal information. Today, we will take the first step in creating long overdue laws to protect Americans from the threat posed by apps controlled by our adversaries, and to send a very strong message that the U.S. will always stand up for our values and freedom. We will not allow for the continued targeting, surveilling, and manipulation of Americans through foreign adversary-controlled apps. I'm thankful to everyone here today who has worked in a bipartisan manner to get us here, including Ranking Member Pallone, China Select Committee on the CCP Chairman Mike Gallagher, Ranking Member Krishnamurthy, and I look forward to today's markup, and I yield back. I now recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, Representative Pallone, for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Well, let me thank Chair Rogers for her cooperation on this markup and the executive hearing that we held earlier today. We're here to mark up two bills that we considered during our executive session earlier today. We've just heard from the intelligence community and national security experts about the threats caused by foreign adversarial control of communication applications and their ability to easily purchase Americans' data from data brokers. We also heard about the constitutional issues implicated when legislation identifies a particular company or application for further scrutiny, particularly when it involves speech and association. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of our full committee hearing this morning, I do not believe it was necessary to rush this process. Nevertheless, I hope members feel they gained important information in the executive session as we prepare to move forward on these bills on this timetable. First, let me mention H.R. 7521, the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act, bipartisan legislation introduced by Representative Krishnamurthy and Gallagher. This bill would address the national security risk posed by certain applications operated by companies controlled by foreign adversaries. Specifically under the bill's framework, if an application is deemed to be operated by a company controlled by a foreign adversary, the application must be divested from foreign adversary control within 180 days. If the application is not divested, entities in the United States would be prohibited from distributing, maintaining, or updating the application through an online marketplace and providing internet hosting services. The bill also requires foreign-controlled adversary applications to provide users with all available data from their account, including photos, videos, and posts, if they requested it. This will allow users to move their data to another application of their choice. We'll also consider H.R. 7520, Protecting Americans' Data from Foreign Adversaries Act of 2024, bipartisan legislation that I introduced with Chair Rogers. This bill protects Americans' sensitive personal data by prohibiting data that, by prohibiting data brokers from selling, transferring, or giving access to such data to foreign adversaries or entities controlled by foreign adversaries. It also gives enforcement authority to the FTC and provides them with the authority to seek civil penalties of more than $50,000 for each violation of this prohibition. I will be supporting both of these bills today. My hope is that if enacted, H.R. 7521 will force divestment of TikTok, and Americans will be able to continue to use this and other similarly situated platforms without the risk that they are being operated and controlled by our adversaries. As I said this morning, many of these platforms are modern-day media companies, and we have a long history of restricting our airwaves from ownership by foreign governments and individuals due to the national security concerns such arrangements pose. It is no different here, and I take the concerns raised by the intelligence community this morning very seriously. They have asked Congress to give them more authority to act in these narrowly defined situations, and I believe that this bill will do that. And again, I appreciate Chair Rogers working with me on the Protecting Americans' Data from Foreign Adversaries Act. This is also a very important and necessary bill, given that even if TikTok and other foreign adversary-controlled applications cease to operate in the United States, foreign adversary governments would still be able to purchase vast amounts of data about Americans through other means. We must put an end to this, and that's exactly what our bipartisan bill does. I also continue to firmly believe that we must pass comprehensive national data privacy protections along the lines of the bill we overwhelmingly passed here in the committee last Congress, and we are going to continue to work on that. So I appreciate the work of all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle on these important bills, and with that, Madam Chair, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair calls up HR 7521 and asks the clerk to report.
HR 7521, a bill to protect the national security of the United States from the threat posed by foreign adversary-controlled applications, such
Without
as TikTok.
objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the bill will be open for amendment at any point, so ordered. Does anyone seek to be recognized on the bill? Seeing none, question now occurs on approving.
We have some.
Okay, yes. For what purpose does Ms. Eshu seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Chairwoman and our ranking member, thank you for the work that was put into this, both to have the secured briefing and now the markup of very important legislation. I support the legislation, and I do so because our first and most important responsibility as members of Congress is to defend our Constitution, protect and defend our nation and its and we do so by protecting our national security. And this issue is a national security issue. I don't support banning, and I don't think anyone on this committee does. But I do think that we have a very important case relative to divestiture. This legislation would separate TikTok, the company, from Beijing and its PRC-based parent company, and it would separate the data that TikTok collects, its algorithms and its source code from Beijing. TikTok has over 170 million users in the United States. This is a stunning scale, and that gives it access to the personal data of every single one of that is part of the 170 million plus users. The national security law of the People's Republic of China requires all Chinese organizations to, quote, support, assist, and cooperate with national intelligence efforts. Under law, ByteDance could be compelled by the Chinese government to provide data on American TikTok users. This is a serious national security threat to the United States and to the privacy of every American, and we can't ignore it. The Protecting Americans' Data from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act will address a known and immediate national security threat, and it will protect Americans' privacy. And it will give this administration and future administrations the authority to respond to such future national security threats. I know that my colleagues here have heard me say that I served for almost a decade on the House Intelligence Committee, and I'm privy to the details of Chinese espionage and the threat that that poses. I raised the alarm on Huawei and ZTE well over a decade ago, and Congress finally took action. We identified the threat posed by equipment manufactured by untrusted suppliers like Huawei and ZTE and passed the Secure and Trusted Communications Networks Act and the Secure Equipment Act to address those threats. The precedent for Congress to take this action exists, and we shouldn't delay. The technology we're considering today may be different, but the threat and our duty remain the same. Even when this bill becomes law, we still will need to pass comprehensive privacy legislation that limits what data can be collected and used to protect Americans' data far better than banning any single company. So with that, Madam Chairwoman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Further discussion? Chair recognizes Mr. Crenshaw for 5 minutes to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
In 1999, two Chinese generals wrote a doctrine called unrestricted warfare, where they argued that to beat the US, China has to confront the United States in a non-war, non-military sphere of conflict. They wrote that, quote, warfare is no longer an activity confined only to the military sphere, and that the course of any war could be changed or its outcome decided by political factors, economic factors, diplomatic factors, cultural factors, technological factors, or other non-military factors. China is at war with us, and they use TikTok as a weapon, or at least they can. It's a platform that 150 million users are addicted to and can be persuaded by. As we're seeing just today, if you want to use your TikTok account, you have to put in your zip code so that TikTok can tell you which representative you should call. And that's just the beginning. Imagine when China wants to use it more nefariously. Imagine when they want to truly engage in psychological warfare against the American people, spread rumors to intimidate us, break down our will, manipulate what we see, manipulate public opinion. They could drive cultural trends. They could drive us into insanity if they wanted, because people are truly addicted to watching that app. And they have all your data. They could tailor it. They could tailor that message to speak to each individual. You want to know how you build a super AI machine? With a lot of data. And they could easily weaponize that when they want to. That's why we're so concerned about this. It's not because we're old and grumpy and don't understand TikTok and how you use it for your business and how you use it to communicate with your friends. I was on social media long before any of the Gen Zers who were mad about TikTok. I understand. But the reality is that TikTok is owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance. Despite their denials, it's actually on their website that their parent company is ByteDance. ByteDance is in China. And when you're in China, you are subject to Chinese laws. And Chinese laws dictate that if they want you to be a spy for China or operate on behalf of the Communist Party, you are obligated to do so. That's just how China works. And so this scenario that I'm putting out there, where they could manipulate and engage in psychological warfare against the American people, it is not a crazy scenario. It is an absolutely plausible scenario. Worth noting, this legislation doesn't actually ban TikTok. This legislation simply says that it would have to be owned by an American company. That's it. If it's owned by an American company, then we could all download it and be happy with it. And we can watch our dance videos. So that's all this does. I don't think this goes too far. This legislation has been carefully thought through in collaboration with our colleagues across the aisle, in collaboration with experts in the administration. And I urge my colleagues to pass it for the sake of our future, for the sake of our future against a potentially adversarial Chinese Communist Party, and for the sake of our young people. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back for the discussion. Are there any amendments? Seeing none, the question now occurs on approving HR 7521, and a roll call has been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Burgess. Burgess votes aye. Latta. Latta votes aye. Guthrie. Guthrie votes aye. Griffith. Griffith votes aye. Bilirakis. Bilirakis votes aye. Bouchon. Bouchon votes aye. Hudson. Hudson votes aye. Wahlberg. Wahlberg votes aye. Carter. Carter votes aye. Duncan. Duncan votes aye. Palmer. Dunn. Dunn votes aye. Curtis. Curtis votes aye. Lesko. Lesko votes aye. Pence. Pence votes aye. Crenshaw. Crenshaw votes aye. Joyce. Joyce votes aye. Armstrong. Armstrong votes aye. Weber. Weber votes aye. Allen. Allen votes aye. Balderson. Balderson votes aye. Fulcher. Fulcher votes aye. Pfluger. Pfluger votes aye. Harshbarger. Harshbarger votes aye. Miller Meeks. Miller Meeks votes aye. Kamick. Kamick votes aye. Obernolte. Obernolte votes aye. Pallone. Pallone votes aye. Eshue. Eshue votes aye. DeGette. DeGette votes aye. Schakowsky. Matsui. Matsui votes aye. Castor. Castor votes aye. Sarbanes. Sarbanes votes aye. Tonko.
Tonko votes aye.
Tonko votes aye. Clark.
Aye.
Clark votes aye. Cardenas.
Aye.
Cardenas votes aye. Ruiz. Ruiz votes aye. Peters. Peters votes aye. Dingle. Dingle votes aye. Veazey. Veazey votes aye. Custer. Custer votes aye. Kelly. Kelly votes aye. Barragan. Rochester. Soto. Soto votes aye. Craig. Craig votes aye. Schreier. Schreier votes aye. Trahan. Trahan votes aye. Fletcher. Fletcher votes aye. Chair Rogers. Chair Rogers votes aye.
Is Mr. Palmer recorded?
Mr. Palmer is not recorded. Palmer votes aye.
Madam Clerk, how is Ms. Schakowsky recorded?
Ms. Schakowsky is not recorded. Aye. Schakowsky votes aye.
How is Ms. Barragan recorded?
Ms. Barragan is not recorded. Barragan votes aye.
Clerk will report.
Chair Rogers, on that vote, there were 50 ayes and 0 noes.
The ayes have it and the bill is adopted. Chair calls up HR 7520 and asks the clerk to report.
HR 7520, a bill to prohibit data brokers from transferring sensitive data of the United States individuals to foreign adversaries and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the bill will be open for amendment at any point so ordered. Does anyone seek to be recognized on the bill? Are there any amendments? Ms. Trahan, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
Thank you, Chair Rogers. I have an amendment at the desk numbered CBNL 017.
The clerk will report.
Amendment to HR 7520, offered by Ms. Trahan. Page 1, line 4, strike "as the" and all that follows through the period at the end of line 5, and insert "as the Data Elimination and Limiting Extensive Tracking and Exchange Act."
Without
or-
objection, the reading will be dispensed with. Ladies recognized for 5 minutes in support of her amendment. Ms. Trahan.
Well, I'd like to thank the chair and the ranking member for calling today's markup. I'm thrilled that the committee has resumed its vital work to protect the privacy of every American, and I commend the committee for bringing forward the Protecting American Data from Foreign Adversaries Act. Data brokers have recklessly engaged in invasive data trafficking activities that violate our privacy and in many cases pose a direct threat to our national security. Madam Chair, I'd like to submit into the record a study from Duke University that revealed the ease by which foreign actors can purchase data on American service members. Thank
Without
you.
objection, so
Thank you.
ordered.
In one case in this study, for as little as 12 cents per individual, researchers were able to purchase the family histories, credit scores, home addresses, health statuses, and political affiliations for Americans in the military from foreign data brokers. And they were able to do it with little to no vetting. I'll say that again. Family histories, credit scores, home addresses, health statuses, and political affiliations. And the same can be done for intelligence officials tasked with safeguarding our most closely held secrets. This is a grave threat to our men and women in uniform and to our national security. And while the efforts of the committee today represent an important step forward in reining in the shady and often negligent practices of data brokers, we must do more. The bill in front of us today correctly bans data broker sales to foreign adversaries. Like my colleagues here today, I support that wholeheartedly. However, I'm deeply concerned about simple workarounds that would allow an overseas middleman to buy the same data we're seeking to protect and immediately resell it to a hostile nation like China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea. The only way to stop that from happening is to ensure that the data can be taken out of the hands of brokers in the first place. I introduced the Bipartisan Delete Act with Senators Bill Cassidy and John Ossoff to give every American, including those brave service members who are courageously defending our country, the right to have data brokers delete and stop collecting their data. And my amendment, which I will withdraw, would take that straightforward approach and make it part of this important bill. I know this is a concern shared by many members on both sides of the dais, as well as the officials who briefed us earlier today. And I simply ask that the chair and ranking member work with me to ensure that we are maximizing this legislation's ability to protect Americans' data and strengthen our national security. Why leave any decision over our personal, sensitive data and that of the courageous Americans tasked with defending our nation to data brokers who have shown blatant disregard on how to handle it? Let's work together to get this right. I withdraw my amendment and I yield back.
Gentlelady withdraws her amendment. Are there further amendments, further discussion? For what purpose does Ms. Eshoo seek recognition?
I would just like to ask our colleague why she's withdrawing the amendment. It seems to me that there's a really compelling case that she has made, and it's an opportunity for us to do something about it. Why are we pushing it down the road? Sure, I'd be happy to yield.
Let me just say this, what the gentlewoman has, from Massachusetts has detailed is part of our national data privacy bill, right? And I mean, I think I need to stress to everybody, maybe I didn't stress it enough when I spoke earlier, you know, our ultimate goal, and is shared by Chair Rogers and I, is to get that bill passed. And so that's an inherent part of that larger bill, and we haven't given up on it. We're still meeting, you know, both sides of the aisle, four corners with the Senate, to try to move it. So we're not in any way, I mean, not only not ignoring it, we've embraced it completely. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Well, I appreciate the explanation, but we are doing something about data brokers in this. So to me, it was a unique opportunity to take up the whole, the entirety, you know, the broader issue. But with that, I yield back the balance of my time. I just hope, before I yield back, I just hope that it's a policy that that there's a guarantee of taking it up, because this really can't be left on the table. I would have preferred it in this and gotten it done, but I'm not in charge, so I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Further discussion. For what purpose does Ms. Schakowsky seek recognition?
I asked to strike the last word.
Gentlelady's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm in favor of the legislation of Mr. Pallone's, the protecting American data from legislation. But I also want to say, follow up on what he had said. For far too long, data brokers have been operating out of sight of most consumers. People don't really know that there are such things as data brokers, and they are not only concerned about China or anyone else, they are concerned right now and worried about the data that is being held and used by all kinds of corporations that end up selling that through data brokers. And I wanted to reinforce what Congressman Pallone had said, is that what we need to do is to get moving on the American Data Privacy and Protection Act, that we have to have a comprehensive privacy bill for people. We have to give them the opportunity to opt out from what data brokers are doing, and provide them with some power in order to protect themselves. So I think this is a good first step. but I think that as soon as we can, we have to go further. Consumers have been waiting, American consumers have been waiting too long, and with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The timeline has slipped on that other bill, but the commitment is still very strong. We're working on it. Okay. Let's see here. Further discussion, further amendments? Seeing none. Question occurs on approving HR 7520, and a roll call has been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Burgess. Burgess votes aye. Latta. Guthrie. Guthrie votes aye. Griffith. Griffith votes aye. Bilirakis. Bilirakis votes aye. Bouchon. Bouchon votes aye. Hudson. Hudson votes aye. Wahlberg. Wahlberg votes aye. Carter. Carter votes aye. Duncan. Duncan votes aye. Palmer. Palmer votes aye. Dunn. Dunn votes aye. Curtis. Curtis votes aye. Lesko. Lesko votes aye. Pence. Pence votes aye. Crenshaw. Crenshaw votes aye. Joyce. Joyce votes aye. Armstrong. Armstrong votes aye. Weber. Weber votes aye. Allen. Allen votes aye. Balderson. Balderson votes aye. Fulcher. Fulcher votes aye. Fluger. Fluger votes aye. Harshbarger. Harshbarger votes aye. Miller Meeks. Miller Meeks votes aye. Kamick. Kamick votes aye. Obernolte. Obernolte votes aye. Pallone.
Aye.
Pallone votes aye. Eshue. Eshue votes aye. Deget. Deget votes aye. Schakowsky. Schakowsky votes aye. Matsui. Matsui votes aye. Castor. Castor votes aye. Sarbanes.
Aye.
Sarbanes votes aye. Tonko.
Aye.
Tonko votes aye. Clark. Clark votes aye. Cardenas. Cardenas votes aye. Ruiz. Ruiz votes aye. Peters. Peters votes aye. Dingle. Dingle votes aye. Veazey. Veazey votes aye. Custer. Custer votes aye. Kelly. Kelly votes aye. Badagon. Badagon votes aye. Blunt Rochester. Soto. Soto votes aye. Craig. Craig votes aye. Schreier. Schreier votes aye. Trahan. Trahan votes aye. Fletcher. Fletcher votes aye. Chair Rogers.
Aye.
Chair Rogers votes aye.
Madam Clerk, how was Mr. Latta recorded?
Mr. Latta is not recorded. Aye. Latta votes aye.
Clerk will report.
Chair Rogers, on that vote, there were 50 ayes and 0 noes.
The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Without objection, staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes to the legislation approved by the committee today. So ordered. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.